Then don't come. My mom chose my sister's housewarming over my wedding, so I uninvited them all. The text from Mom arrived exactly 48 hours before my wedding, and it was only 3 words long: then don't come. At first, I honestly thought she'd sent it to the wrong person. I stared at the glowing screen while the florist asked whether I wanted ivory or white roses, but everything around me faded into silence. I scrolled upward through our conversation, hoping I'd missed something, hoping there was some joke hidden between messages. There wasn't. I had simply asked if she and Dad were still planning to walk into the ceremony on time because the rehearsal dinner mattered to me. Her answer came without hesitation. Your sister's housewarming starts that afternoon. We already committed. If that bothers you. Then came the message that shattered 29 years of trying to be the understanding daughter. Then don't come. My fingers went numb. The florist quietly walked away. My fiancé, Ethan, noticed my face from across the showroom and hurried over. Claire, he asked softly. I handed him my phone without saying a word. His jaw tightened as he read the exchange. They're choosing your sister's housewarming over our wedding? He asked, almost unable to believe it. I nodded once, but I couldn't cry. Not yet. Somehow, this wasn't even surprising. My entire life had been measured against my younger sister, Vanessa. If she won second place, Mom acted like she'd conquered the Olympics. If I graduated at the top of my class, Mom asked why I wasn't valedictorian. When I enlisted in the Army Reserve after college because I wanted to help pay for law school, Mom complained it made family dinners inconvenient. When Vanessa quit 3 jobs in 1 year because her managers didn't appreciate her creativity, Mom called her brave. I learned years ago that fairness wasn't something my parents believed in. But missing my wedding? That crossed a line I never imagined they'd cross. Ethan squeezed my hand. You know this isn't about you. I forced a smile that lasted maybe 2 seconds. It never is. We drove home in silence. Halfway there, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Dad. For one impossible second, I believed he might fix everything. Instead, his message read, "Your mother is stressed. Don't make this harder." I laughed so suddenly that Ethan glanced over in concern. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind people make when disappointment finally becomes too heavy to carry. That night, I opened the family group chat, looked at every smiling profile picture, and typed 12 words that changed everything. If my wedding isn't important enough, none of you need to attend. Then I removed every single member before anyone could answer. 10 seconds later, my phone exploded with calls from cousins, aunts, uncles, and numbers I barely recognized. I turned it face down. For the first time in my life, I chose peace over permission. I had no idea that my decision had just triggered a chain of events reaching far beyond a family argument. By sunrise the next morning, the story had already spread through the family like wildfire. My Aunt Denise called crying, insisting I apologize because your mother has done so much for you. My cousin Brandon texted, "You only get one mom." I didn't answer either one. What none of them knew was how many chances I'd already given her. They never saw the birthdays she skipped because Vanessa needed emotional support. They weren't there when my army deployment ceremony had only 3 people in the audience because my parents were helping Vanessa move apartments, for the 4th time. They never knew Mom mailed Vanessa a $20,000 check for a down payment on her dream home while telling me she couldn't contribute a single dollar toward my wedding because retirement was expensive. Retirement apparently became less expensive when Vanessa wanted a bigger kitchen island. Ethan's mother, Linda, quietly sat beside me on the porch with 2 cups of coffee. She didn't offer advice. She simply handed me 1 mug and said, "Sometimes the family you marry into loves you the way your own family should have." I nearly broke down then. Before I could answer, my phone rang again. This time the caller ID made my stomach tighten. It was Vanessa. Against my better judgment, I answered. "You really caused all this drama over one party," she said before I could speak. Behind her voice I heard laughter, moving boxes, and people celebrating. "It's my wedding," I replied. "You scheduled your housewarming after we announced the date." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Mom says you'll get over it. Besides, everyone already RSVP'd to me first." Ethan reached for my hand as I struggled to stay calm. "Congratulations," I finally said. "Enjoy your party." She wasn't finished. "Honestly, Claire, you've always needed attention. Maybe this is good for you." The line went dead. I stared at my reflection in the black phone screen. Something inside me quietly shifted. The hurt was still there, but underneath it, something stronger had begun growing. Resolve. That afternoon I met with our wedding coordinator to finalize the seating chart. We removed 6 empty chairs from the front row. Watching those names disappear should have devastated me. Instead, it felt strangely freeing. Across the room, a man in a dark suit stepped inside the venue, spoke briefly with the manager, then left without looking around. I barely noticed him until the manager hurried over, her expression suddenly nervous. "Ms. Harper," she whispered, "has anyone in your family mentioned security concerns?" My heart skipped. "No." "Why?" She hesitated before answering. "Someone asked detailed questions about your guest list this morning. They identified themselves as family." Ethan and I exchanged a silent glance. Neither of us said what we were both thinking. Vanessa had never been satisfied with simply winning. She always needed me to lose. That evening the rehearsal dinner should have been filled with laughter, embarrassing childhood stories, and excited relatives raising glasses. Instead, half the table sat empty, their place cards untouched. Ethan's Marine Corps buddies filled the silence with jokes, his parents welcomed every guest like family, and somehow the room still felt warm despite the missing faces. Just as dessert arrived, the restaurant doors swung open. Everyone instinctively turned toward the entrance. Mom stood there wearing an expensive cream-colored dress, Dad beside her, and Vanessa smiling like she'd walked onto a red carpet instead of into the aftermath of a family disaster. Conversation stopped instantly. Mom didn't look embarrassed. She looked annoyed. She marched straight toward our table. "You've embarrassed this family enough," she declared loudly. "Tell everyone you overreacted." Every fork froze in midair. Ethan slowly stood beside me without saying a word. I remained seated. Calm. Too calm. "You told me not to come," I reminded her quietly. I listened. She folded her arms. "I meant the housewarming." "No," I replied. You chose the housewarming. Vanessa rolled her eyes dramatically. Can we stop pretending this wedding is the center of the universe? Before I could answer, a deep voice echoed from behind them. Actually, tomorrow's wedding has become the center of several ongoing investigations. Every head turned. The same man I'd seen earlier stepped into the dining room, this time accompanied by 2 uniformed police officers and a woman carrying a leather credentials case. He looked directly at me before addressing the room. Miss Harper? I slowly stood. Yes? He opened the case just enough for me to recognize the federal badge inside. The entire restaurant fell into stunned silence as he said the next sentence. I'm Special Agent Daniel Mercer. We need to speak with you immediately, because someone very close to you has been lying about who they really are. The room went so quiet I could hear the soft hum of the restaurant's air conditioner. Every pair of eyes shifted between me, the federal badge, and my family. My mother recovered first. This is ridiculous, she snapped, stepping in front of the agent as though she could physically block him. My daughter is getting married tomorrow. Whatever this is can wait. Special Agent Daniel Mercer didn't even blink. Ma'am, he said evenly, it can't. His calm voice carried more authority than shouting ever could. One of the police officers quietly moved beside him, not threatening anyone, simply making it clear this conversation wasn't optional. Ethan slid closer to my side, his hand brushing mine beneath the table. Claire, he whispered, whatever happens, we're handling it together. I nodded without taking my eyes off the agent. What is this about? I asked. Mercer looked around the room before answering. I'd prefer to discuss it privately. Before I could respond, Vanessa laughed loudly enough for everyone to hear. See? I told you she always finds a way to make everything about herself. Several relatives chuckled awkwardly, eager to stay on my mother's good side. Then Mercer turned toward Vanessa. His expression didn't change, but his next question wiped the smile from her face. Ms. Vanessa Harper, where were you between 2 and 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon? Her confidence cracked for the first time all evening. Why would that matter? She asked. Because someone using your name signed into a restricted federal property 23 miles from here. The laughter disappeared. Dad frowned. There has to be some mistake. Mercer replied, that's exactly what we're trying to determine. We moved into a private conference room while the guests whispered outside. Mom insisted on coming, claiming she had every right as their mother, and Dad followed behind her without saying a word. Vanessa entered last, still pretending she wasn't worried, but I noticed her fingers trembling as she pulled out a chair. Agent Mercer placed a slim folder on the table without opening it. Miss Harper, he said, looking at me, did anyone in your family ever ask you to sign legal documents without reading them? My stomach tightened. 3 months earlier, Vanessa had shown up crying, saying her mortgage paperwork had a printing error and she needed one emergency signature because the bank was closing in an hour. She'd rushed me through it while Mom insisted I stop asking questions and help your sister for once. I'd signed only 1 page before Ethan walked in and suggested we review everything first. Vanessa had suddenly grabbed the papers, claiming she'd already fixed the problem. I hadn't thought about it since. Yes, I answered slowly. But I never finished signing anything. Mercer finally opened the folder. Inside were copies of financial records, property transfers, and photographs. One image caught my attention immediately. It showed someone entering a federal courthouse using an identification card with my name and photo. I stared in disbelief. That's my driver's license picture. Correct, Mercer said. But it wasn't your identification card. He slid another photograph across the table. The fake license looked nearly perfect. My name. My birthday. My face. Only the address was different. Mom immediately pointed at the photo. Anyone could make something like that. Mercer looked directly at her. Someone did. The question is who benefited. He turned another page. There were signatures beside my printed name. They looked disturbingly close to mine. Someone has been attempting to create a legal identity using your information. Ethan leaned forward. Identity theft? Much more sophisticated than that, Mercer replied. The fake identity was connected to shell companies, financial transfers, and one property purchase currently under federal review. Dad slowly removed his glasses. Claire has nothing to do with any of this. We know, Mercer answered. That's why we're here. Vanessa suddenly stood so fast her chair scraped across the floor. This is insane, she shouted. You're accusing this family without proof. Mercer calmly closed the folder. Actually, we have substantial proof. What we don't yet know is who knowingly participated. My mother's face turned pale, but she quickly recovered. We're leaving, she declared. Our attorney will contact you. Before anyone could move, another woman entered the room carrying a sealed evidence box. She whispered something into Mercer's ear. He nodded once, then looked directly at me. Miss Harper, there's one more thing you need to know before tomorrow. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. What? He placed a small velvet jewelry box on the table. I recognized it instantly. It was the antique ring my late grandmother had secretly left me in her will. The ring my mother insisted had been lost after Grandma's funeral 3 years earlier. My breath caught as Mercer slowly opened the lid. The ring was inside. We recovered this during the execution of a search warrant earlier today, he said quietly. It wasn't lost. My mother's face drained of every ounce of color. Dad turned toward her with complete confusion. Margaret. He whispered. Tell me that's not what I think it is. She couldn't answer. Across the table, Vanessa took one terrified step backward as Mercer reached into the evidence box again and removed a thick envelope marked with my grandmother's handwriting. He looked at me with unmistakable seriousness before saying, "This letter was hidden with the ring. Based on its contents, your grandmother knew someone in this family was planning to betray you years before she died." For several long seconds, no one moved. The only sound in the conference room was the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead. My eyes stayed locked on the envelope. I recognized my grandmother's elegant cursive immediately. She had taught me to write my name that same way when I was 6 years old, sitting beside me on her porch swing every Sunday afternoon. After she passed away, Mom insisted there had been no personal letters left behind. Your grandmother didn't believe in sentimental things, she'd said. I believed her because I wanted to. Now the envelope sitting inches from me proved she had lied. Agent Mercer carefully slid it across the table. The seal was already broken when we recovered it, he explained. We documented everything before bringing it here. My hand shook as I unfolded the yellowed pages. The room faded away. It felt like Grandma was speaking directly to me. My dearest Claire, the letter began. If you're reading this, then the truth stayed hidden longer than I hoped. I pray I'm wrong, but I fear someone in our family values money more than love. If anything happens to me, don't trust what you're told about my estate. There is something that belongs to you alone, and someone will try to make sure you never receive it. My vision blurred. Ethan gently rested his hand on my shoulder. Across the table, Mom stared at the floor instead of at me. Dad looked from the letter to Mom with growing disbelief. Margaret. He whispered again. What did you do? She remained silent. Grandma's letter continued. Claire, I chose you not because you were my oldest granddaughter, but because you earned my trust. You showed character when nobody was watching. If anyone pressures you to sign papers, surrender documents, or give away what I've left you, refuse. They may even convince themselves they're doing the right thing. But betrayal wrapped in family is still betrayal. Every sentence felt like another piece of a puzzle I hadn't known existed. Then I reached the final paragraph. My heart nearly stopped. The key is not the ring. The ring only proves ownership. The real inheritance has never been inside this house. The room erupted before I could even process those words. That's enough. Mom suddenly shouted, lunging toward the letter. One of the officers stepped between us before she could grab it. That letter was written when your grandmother was confused, Mom insisted, her voice cracking. She wasn't thinking clearly. Dad looked at her as if he were seeing a stranger. Confused, he repeated quietly. She balanced her investment accounts until the week before she died. Mom ignored him. Claire, sweetheart, don't let these people manipulate you. It was the first time she'd called me sweetheart in months. The word felt hollow. Agent Mercer calmly removed another document from the evidence folder. Mrs. Harper, this is your signed statement from 3 years ago declaring your mother died without any undisclosed assets. He laid a second paper beside it. This is a recently recovered inventory prepared by her attorney listing multiple sealed trust documents that disappeared the day after her funeral. Dad's face turned ghostly white. You told me there wasn't any trust, he said. Mom swallowed hard. There wasn't. Mercer didn't argue. Instead, he pressed a button on a small recorder. A familiar voice filled the room. It was Vanessa. Mom, if Claire ever finds out about the trust, she'll ruin everything. Just keep telling her grandma left her that old ring. Another voice answered. My mother's. She'll never know. She believes everything I tell her. The recording ended. Silence crashed over the room. Dad slowly removed his wedding ring and placed it on the table. His hands were trembling. 34 years, he said softly. I defended you every single time she questioned you. Every time she cried after another holiday. And all this time. He couldn't finish. Mom burst into tears, but they no longer sounded convincing. They sounded desperate. Vanessa's confidence vanished completely. She backed toward the door, her breathing becoming shallow. Ethan noticed before anyone else. "She's leaving," he warned. The instant every head turned, Vanessa bolted into the hallway. The officers chased after her while the rest of us rushed outside. Guests from the rehearsal dinner stared in confusion as Vanessa sprinted across the parking lot toward her luxury SUV. She fumbled with her keys, dropped them, grabbed them again, and finally threw herself into the driver's seat. "Vanessa!" Dad shouted. "Stop." She slammed the door and started the engine. Before she could shift into reverse, 3 unmarked black SUVs rolled into the parking lot from opposite directions, boxing her in with perfect precision. Men and women wearing FBI windbreakers stepped out almost simultaneously. Vanessa froze behind the steering wheel. Mercer calmly walked to her window and knocked once. She stared straight ahead, refusing to move. "Ms. Harper," he called through the glass, "this is your final opportunity to cooperate voluntarily." Her hands tightened around the wheel. Then, in one reckless decision, she floored the accelerator. Tires screamed against the pavement. The SUV lurched forward, only to slam into one of the federal vehicles blocking the exit. Airbags exploded inside the cabin. Smoke drifted into the night as horrified wedding guests watched from the restaurant entrance. Agents surrounded the vehicle within seconds. Ethan instinctively pulled me behind him while the officers shouted commands. The driver's door slowly opened. Vanessa stumbled out, dazed but standing. For a brief moment, I thought it was over. Then she looked directly at me through the crowd, tears streaming down her face, and screamed, "You don't understand. Grandma wasn't protecting you, she was protecting what your real father left behind." Every sound around me disappeared. My mother collapsed onto the pavement. Dad stood frozen, unable to speak. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet as Agent Mercer turned toward me with an expression that told me one terrifying truth. Vanessa hadn't just blurted out a desperate